The clerk reflect we are back in session. Parties and council are present. All members of our jury or alternates are present. Witnesses back on the witness stand, and Ms. Rodriguez will continue your direct examination.
Sure. When we left off, we had gone through the Union Bank accounts and highlighted some particular areas that you believe if you had different information, hypothetically speaking, that could change your opinion. Showing you Exhibit 886, which you took a look at previously, that was provided by the defense. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay, and if we were to add these particular transactions that you highlighted, and I'm going to give you 882. For you to take a look at while we do this. That would substantially increase the number of withdrawals that occurred on this chart that you looked at, right? You look at what you identified on January 20th of 2009, that first bank statement that I gave you. We highlighted everything on the 26th, correct?
Yes.
And that amount would total $820.75. Does that sound right?
On the 26th?
Yes.
That looks about right.
Okay. So that would reflect that additional money, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then going into the next month, if you can flip to February, there was a couple of transactions that occurred on February 9th. Do you see those two that we highlighted?
Yes.
And that would be an additional $856, is that right?
Yes.
And then on the next page, we have some transactions on the 17th that you highlighted. Do you see those?
Yes.
And that amount would be $536.98. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then moving on to the month of March, you identified two transactions on March 27th. Do you see those?
Yes.
And those two would be the amount of $642. Is that right?
Yes.
And then you identified three transactions at the bottom on April 6th. Do you see those?
Yes.
And that amount would be $1,177. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then moving on to April, you identified a transaction on April 21st, and that was $312. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then we see one also on the 22nd, and that was $106. Is that right?
Yes.
And then moving down to the 27th, we have two transactions, and those total $624. Is that right?
Yes.
And then down to February 1st, you identified two transactions for a total of $521. Is that right?
Yes.
And then moving into the month of May, you identified three transactions on February 15th. Is that right?
I'm sorry, what date are you asking?
The month of May on February 15th.
May 15th?
I'm sorry. Sorry. Yes, May 15th.
Yes, three transactions on that date.
And those totaled $1,142. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then moving into June, you identified a transaction on June 12th. Do you see that?
Yes.
And that was $209.
Correct.
And then moving into July, There are 3 transactions on July 9th. Do you see those? Oh, I'm sorry, those are all ATM withdrawals. So there were no transactions in July. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. And then moving into August, we have a transaction on August 11th for $527.75. Is that right?
Yes.
And then on the 12th is where we have that data stream. Is that right?
Yes.
And that was $428. Is that correct?
I've already included that.
That's included on there?
I've included that in the cash withdrawals.
Okay, do you know if that amount was included on the $712 that's reflected on this?
Yes.
Okay. Then on the 13th, you identified an additional transaction of $321. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then the 14th would be another data stream transaction, and you also identified the 17th. There were 3 transactions. Do you see those?
Yes.
And that's $963. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then on the 25th, you identified another transaction for $215.75. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then moving into September, you did not identify any additional transactions. And then moving into October, there were no additional transactions, and November as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And as we look at this particular schedule here, we note that the bank account actually closed on November 5th of 2009. Is that right?
Yes.
So if I write up here on 11/5, would that be correct in terms of when the bank account, the Union bank account closed?
Yes.
And then all through here, the 6th through the 26th, there's no bank account information. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, so we'll just draw a line through that.
Your Honor, if we ask that she not delete or cross through, just make notes on the side, that's fine. This is now an abuse of destroying an exhibit.
Objection, improper objection. We can address this at sidebar if there's a complaint.
The objection sustained, he's testified that there's no bank account, and you indicated the date that the account was closed. That's sufficient.
Okay, so on the 27th through the 9th, the next page, there is no bank account when this exhibit shows $0 amounts for casino withdrawals. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of any bank account of the defendant at that time.
Okay, and then the following page on the 10th of January up until the 3rd of February is when the bank account, new bank account was opened. Is that correct?
The new bank account was opened on February 3rd, yes.
And that's the Bank of America account?
Yes.
Did you have an opportunity while we were at break to total up all of those transactions?
I did.
And how much additional were those transactions?
$9,424.23 during the 2009 time period. And then in 2010, it's another $135, bringing a total to $9,559.23.
Okay. And you were asked some questions about the casino and whether or not you knew if the defendant spent the money at the casino. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
And you also don't have information in terms of whether or not the defendant arrived at the casino with cash. Would that be correct?
Correct.
During the opportunity that you had to review the particular bank records, did you notice, and did you look at transactions that occurred on or around February 4th of 2010 from both Mr. McStay's account and the defendant's account?
Yes.
Did you notice any transactions for a Chick-fil-A restaurant?
No, I do not see them.
And when you had that opportunity to review both of those accounts, did it appear that both of those accounts used their debit card or made purchases from various restaurants and things like that?
Yes.
Objection, Vegas, time.
Overruled. That's really.
Now, you were asked questions about whether or not taking money from an account would, without the owner's permission, would be fraudulent. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And would writing checks on somebody else's account and signing their name also be considered fraudulent?
I think so, yes.
And you aren't familiar, or you haven't been provided with any information regarding cell phone towers and casino activity for the defendant, is that right?
Correct.
And so, if in fact those transactions, hypothetically speaking, were ATM or debit card transactions or cash withdrawals, would that change your charts that you prepared in this case?
Yes, I would have added in these cash withdrawals along with the other ones that I had identified.
And would that also change the transactions the percentage transactions on the chart that the defense showed you?
Yes.
You talked a little bit about, also on direct about, or on cross about cash transactions and things of that nature. And you indicated that it's not common in your experience for most businesses to do business that way, is that correct?
The state's testimony.
Overruled.
It's a bad practice.
Why is that?
There's no documentation of the transaction, so one, you can't prove to maybe your supplier that you paid them, and two, if you're completing your income taxes, you're not going to have any support for those transactions.
And in terms of what you were asked to do in this case, were you ever asked to do anything or reach any conclusions about what the numbers meant, or just provide the numbers?
Well, I was asked to provide the numbers, and I drew my own conclusions.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Ladies and gentlemen, the information about the potential additional cash withdrawals at casinos is based upon, as stated by Mr. Rodriguez, the hypothetical that there's additional information that would show that those, in fact, are cash withdrawals. If there is subsequent evidence to that effect, then of course you can consider that testimony. If there is not subsequent evidence that those, in fact, are cash withdrawals, then I will again instruct you to disregard that additional testimony based on the hypothetical that they are. Okay? Anything additional on cross?
Just briefly. So, if I understand, hypothetically, if we were to add that, all those transactions that Ms. Rodriguez went over with you, hypothetically it would be an additional $9,500. I think that's what you said?
Yes, approximately that.
Okay. So what?
Objection or
Does it matter?
Sustained.
And
And calls for speculation or confusion.
And what if she says it changed your opinion? You mean your opinion that those were cash withdrawals? I didn't, because it was couched in the way that it would change your opinion for that.
Well,
Remember that?
yes,
What opinion did you give yesterday?
I gave opinions as to my interpretation of transactions and the totals of them, and this would change that opinion.
It would change the number, total, correct?
Yes.
But not an opinion. You didn't give an opinion.
Well, if my opinion is that there were $10,000 in cash withdrawals and now it's $12,000, then I would say my opinion changed from 10,000 to 12,000.
Essentially what you did was you looked at the bank statements regarding your testimony, you looked at Mr. Merritt's bank statements, and you pulled out figures, and you made, directly from the bank statements, and you pulled out those figures and you made your charts. That's essentially what you did, and mostly concentrating on the cash transactions. Is that fair to, is that an accurate summary?
I looked at all his transactions.
Right.
There happened to be a lot of cash transactions, so that's why they were most prominent.
Right. Okay. So last night you said that, you kept mentioning that last night you did something, or Ms. Rodriguez asked you about last night, or you did something yesterday, after you testified. And did someone ask you to do something last night? Did Ms. Rodriguez and you talk about going and finding more things that can be categorized as cash withdrawals?
No.
That's something you did all on your own?
Well, I didn't have information that I wanted earlier, and I was able to get some last night and this morning.
And you consulted with Ms. Rodriguez, right?
I talked with her about what I obtained.
And she either put you in touch with people, or you, or she gave you the number of a person, or you guys called together people, correct?
We didn't do anything together.
Or she gave you the number of someone?
She did.
Okay, so when I say you consulted with her, you did consult with her, correct?
Vegas to think.
Ms. Rodriguez, last night, or after we adjourned yesterday.
Yes.
Okay. And the idea was to identify more cash withdrawals, right?
No, it was to gain an understanding of transactions that I didn't know enough about. And I always want to have as complete information as I can. And as I learn more information, I want to incorporate that.
Well, you said you got your assignment in December of 2018, correct?
Yes.
And you did your charts and you turned those over after we started trial, but at some point you turned those over to the DA's office in January or February?
Yes.
Okay. So you could have checked between then and now about additional things you didn't understand, correct?
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
I have been trying to ascertain information about some of the transactions that we just went over that had the preface of GCA, and I wasn't in touch with the right people to get that information.
And then you get in touch with Ms. Rodriguez and bingo, you have a new potential opinion, correct?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
After your consultation with Ms. Rodriguez, you got a new opinion,
Objection,
correct?
argumentative.
Sustained and the state's positive.
All right. Let me, I'm tempted to put up more charts, but I'm going to spare you that, okay? But would it be safe to say that the number of days that Ms. Rodriguez went over with you, that chart that has the, 886, remember this one? She was
Yes.
writing on it, remember that?
Yes.
Okay. The days that hypothetically were added, these figures, are largely the same dates, right? It doesn't change, I mean, except for a couple, it's essentially the same days. Would you agree? Would you like to take a look at it?
Some additional days were added. I didn't count how many.
I understand, but I'm saying generally it's the same days that the previous transactions were
Can I take
identified.
a quick look?
Sure.
I'd say there were maybe 5 or 6.
5 or 6 additional days than the ones that I went over with you, right?
Yes.
Okay. when you consulted with Ms. Rodriguez yesterday, did you ask her about the checks that are mentioned in Mr. Merritt's bank statements? Because you were trying to, remember, you were talking about getting the information on the GCAs, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ask her about the checks, though, that are mentioned also in the statements?
Objection beyond the scope.
Overruled. Yeah.
No, because she told me a month ago that those checks weren't available. So there's no reason to continue with asking that.
Okay. Did you ever review, or did you, well, let me ask you this. Did you ever review a ledger between Mr. Merritt and Mr. McStay as to, which would incorporate cost of goods, different projects, cost of materials? Was that ever given to you to review?
I don't recall ever seeing a ledger.
So you can just refresh your memory.
Okay. Well, the format looks a little familiar with an email that I was given. This was an attachment, but I couldn't say anything about the truthfulness of this.
Do you know who sent it to who? Meaning, did Joseph send it to Mr. Merritt, or did Mr. Merritt send it to Joseph? Do you know?
I don't recall right now.
What was your understanding of what this was?
I didn't know what it was.
Did you ask? Did you make any inquiry of Ms. Rodriguez or anyone on the district attorney's, from the district attorney's office, what this was?
The additional amounts that Ms. Rodriguez told you hypothetically to consider, hypothetically, if those were additional cash withdrawals, you still don't know what percentage was used for gambling, which percentage he walked out with. You still don't know the answers to those questions, correct?
No. The only thing it answers is that those were cash withdrawals at a casino.
Right. And how much of those, well, they were purchases, they're legal purchases, correct? But what, I know you said that hypothetically that it could be, let's just assume, I'm assuming that they're cash withdrawals for the purpose of this question. You don't know what was the cash was spent on, do you?
No.
Meaning, are you familiar with poker at all?
Yes.
Okay, so do you know that they have tournaments at casinos, correct?
Yes.
And you have to buy in, correct?
Yes.
Have you ever participated in one of those?
No.
So you go to the casino as well, correct? Are you?
Objection relevance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weitzman, but I do have one more question. So yesterday you said, I could have it, I may have had it wrong, but it caught my ear and I just wanted to ask you. You said that money coming in is a credit
Yes.
and money going out is a debit,
Yes.
correct? Did you say money coming in is a credit and that's a positive? You said it's positive, right? It reflects as a positive.
Yes.
Money going out is a debit, which is negative.
Correct.
Okay, I like that. Would you mind coming home with me and explaining that to my wife? Would you be available by phone or? Okay, nothing further. Thank you.
Anything further on redirect?
You received a couple of new exhibits yesterday evening after court, is that correct?
Yes.
And you had previously reviewed a report from the defense attorney expert, Mr. Shogun. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And those exhibits, one of them that you testified about today, were not included with the initial information that you received. Is that right?
Right.
And you've spoken with the defense attorneys when we've been at break?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Anything else? Any objection to Mr. Weitzman being excused?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, sir, for your attendance, and you are excused,
Subject to recall, Your Honor, please.
subject to recall. I guess they know where to find you if we need you back. Make sure you don't take any of our exhibits with you. And you have your next witness here?
Yes, I'd actually like to recall Sergeant Smith for a brief matter.
Okay.
I emailed it to you. Sorry, I emailed it to you. I don't have a copy of it.
Please restate your name.
Ryan Smith, RYANSMITH.
And you're reminded you're still under oath.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Sergeant Smith, are you familiar with the phone records that have been talked about a few times in here for the defendant, Mr. Merritt?
Yes, I am.
And I think we've talked about this one before, but 439C, I'm just going to put on the overhead for a minute. Is this what we're talking about?
Yes, he's a representative of the phone records.
Okay. Did you do something in relation to gambling establishments in reviewing Mr. Merritt's phone records?
Yes, I did.
What did you do?
So we determined which gambling casinos he went to, and I found the GPS tower locations for those casinos, or the cell phone tower closest to those casinos, and I searched them within his phone records.
Okay, and what area of the phone records as we see being displayed did you search through?
So on the right side of the overhead right here, these are latitude and longitude coordinates that you can plug directly into Google Earth.
And what does it do when you plug that number into Google Earth?
It takes you to the location.
And so, and this may not be one in particular, but I'm just going to show for an example. Can you pick the line there just above that first bracket you see and tell the jury specifically the numbers of interest?
So the numbers we're talking about is 34.10839. You put that in first in Google Earth, and then you put the negative 117.55625. And then with both of those in the search toolbar, it takes you to the location.
Google Magic, right?
Google Magic.
Okay, so looking at that, did you compile exhibit number 890?
Yes, I did.
And what is that?
This is a representative chart of the tower hits by Commerce Casino.
And the second page to that is?
The second page is a screenshot of Google Earth, which has pins at the two towers the phone would hit, as well as a tab for the Commerce Casino. Or a pin.
Try and get this. We first see an overall, then we'll zoom in. At the bottom, did you total the number of days that the cell tower was visited or hit?
Yes, I did. That's you'll see it on the bottom here. It's total days visited. It's 18.
Okay, and the total hits, what does that denote?
That denotes how many times the towers were hit, or how many times the phone connected to the tower.
So for example, looking at November 18th as an exemplar, how did you document that?
November 18th is in the middle here. You'll see the time range, 3:19 p.m. to 6:59 p.m., and it contacted these two towers 10 times.
What time frame does this cover?
This is
No, the total chart.
Sorry, That was my next question, Your Honor. You actually got a step ahead of me.
Okay.
So this compilation for which tower is this?
This is the Commerce Casino Towers.
And it covers which dates?
I searched the entire phone records, which covered February 2009 all the way through February 2010. But this chart, the first hit appears on March 16th, 2009, and the last one is January 15th, 2010.
Now, is it possible that you may have missed one or two in there?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is just a representative sampling of what you could find searching through that year's worth of phone records.
Correct.
And being human, maybe there's a typo in there?
Probably is because you said that.
And then that second page, get the lighting just right again with the magic. Man, these do not like this stuff. Man, we're trying. Yeah, we do the bottom. Yeah. Here's me underneath. That's not good. Let's go this way. Try to get this. Oops. Okay. Man, this is terrible. Yeah, at least you can somewhat see it there. Can you point out what we're seeing here?
So this is the Google Earth screenshot I mentioned, and in the top upper, like my left, you'll see the A balloon that says Commerce Casino. That's the casino where it's at. This is the first tower, Commerce Tower, and then the second tower is down here.
And that's roughly what the Interstate 5 and Telegraph?
Correct. Yeah. This is 5 that goes through the page, and Telegraph is Washington. I think the parallels up here.
So exhibit number 888. You recognize that?
Correct. This is a chart for the Pachanga Casino, and it covers the same time period for the phone records. This chart, the first hit was on November 20th, and the last one was on February 2nd, 2010.
November 20th of 2009
2009.
to February 13th of 2010.
Correct.
And again, the summary was the total number days visited or days listed. That was how many?
11 days that those towers were contacted.
And number of hits.
Approximately 45.
And this one has a notation on it that's a little different in some spots. Let me try to zoom in here. You have some parenthetical comments next to it. Can you please describe those for us?
So for these comments, you'll see in the middle area where it says time span / contacts. For example, on the first date, November 20th, 2009, the tower first contacts, or the phone first contacts the tower at 7:20 p.m. And then there's the next hit on his phone records is actually the next day at 1:41 a.m. So there's nothing in between those. It's the next line is the same tower, but it's a different day. So that's kind of how I separated it.
And again, when there was multiple hits to that tower, you noted that the same way with like a 6X or a 3X or a 7X?
Yes, sir.
So specifically on February 9th, 2010, what did you find?
So on February 9th, 2010, Mr. Merritt's phone first contacts the Pachanga Tower at 4:49 p.m. And it shows there, at least it's contacting towers there, through 10:11 p.m. and it hits approximately 6 times.
And then on February 13th, 2010, what did you observe?
That's also, the first contact at the tower right next to the Pechanga Casino is at 12:58 p.m. That's when it first contacts, and that spans through 8:38 p.m. And contacts those towers 3 times.
And again, that second page for reference was the map, correct?
Correct. This is the screenshot. You'll see the tower here at the bottom right where the yellow pin is, and then this is the actual casino, and this distance is approximately half a mile.
This doesn't give us an overview where, for those who may not be familiar, is the Pechanga Resort in relation to other landmarks or towns or streets or highways?
No, it doesn't.
Where is it?
Pechanga is in Temecula. It's just north of Fall River.
Last but not least, 8. I'm going to go with 889 given the order we're in, but it kind of looks like an 819, but...
So this is a similar type of graph, but this is regarding the San Manuel Casino and the towers contacted. Again, the date range is the same, covering the phone records from February 2009 all the way through February 2010. And it's denoted the same way.
Okay. And this was from February of 09
through February 2010.
February of 2010. And again, is attached with a map of where that tower location is?
Yes, sir.
And again, I see notations such as on April 10th, 2009, something in parentheses. What are you trying to explain when you do that?
So that just indicates, so you'll see April 10th, that's in the middle of the page here. The tower was contacted at 5:46 a.m. It was only contacted once, and it's approximately 2 hours until any other tower is contacted.
This is actually a 4-page document, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And again, you totaled the total number of days and the total number of hits at the bottom?
Yes, sir. The total number of days is approximately 44 days, and then the tower hits is 103.
In the map, on the last page, 4th page.
And so on the map, you'll see the San Manuel Casino is kind of up near the mountain in the top of the photograph, and the tower it's contacting is down by the freeway here, and it's approximately a mile.
Okay. In all candor, this is what the records show, correct?
Yes, sir.
This does not tell you where specifically the defendant's body was or the phone was in relation to that tower at that time, correct?
Absolutely correct. This is just the towers, his phone contacted when he was either receiving or making telephone calls.
Thank you. I have nothing further at this time.
Anything on the cross?
But,
I'm sorry?
yes, but I'd have to do it after lunch. Let me give me a copy, let's email a copy, and I still can't access my email. So I haven't actually got to do a detailed review of any of this.
All right, we'll take our noon recess a little bit early at this time, till 1:30 this afternoon. Keep in mind the admonition previously given to you, not to form or express any opinions about the case, not to discuss the case, or allow anyone to discuss the case with you or in your presence. Again, that means not discuss anything about the case, any of the witnesses, testimony, exhibits, parties, or attorneys, and we'll see everyone back 1:30.